Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel for another episode of the Route Learning series, this time recorded in Train Simulator. So in this episode I wanted to cover a journey that's really very long overdue on this channel, and I wanted to cover a journey on the Southwestern Main Line and Portsmouth Direct Line. So we're starting here at London Waterloo, and I'm going to be driving all of the way to Portsmouth Harbour. So we're on the Southwestern Main Line until we reach Woking, and then we turn off away from the Southwestern Main Line onto the Portsmouth Direct Line. The total journey distance for this journey is around 74 miles, and the timetable that I'm following is the timetable of train 1 Papa 55, which is the 17:30 departure from London Waterloo. This is actually a scenario which comes with the Armstrong Powerhouse Class 444 and Class 450 enhancement pack. Our stops along this journey include Woking, Worplesdon, Guildford, Godalming, Haslemere, Petersfield, Havant, Fratton, Portsmouth and Southsea, and finally Portsmouth Harbour. I should also mention that this is going to be quite a laggy journey initially as we depart away from London, so the frame rate is going to be well below 30. We're looking probably 15 to 20 frames a second on average, and it will drop even further as we go through Clapham Junction. But once we get the other side of Clapham Junction, and especially the other side of Wimbledon, the frame rates will free up drastically, and I should be able to record at the locked 30 frames a second that I've got this set to. At present we're getting just 12 frames a second in this direction facing Waterloo. This route can bring any computer system to its knees. So the train that I'm driving on this journey is of course the Class 450 Desiro electric multiple unit. So the Class 450 was manufactured by Siemens, and it's been in service since the 5th of October 2003 and was built at Krefeld in Germany. They are part of the Desiro family of electric multiple units, and they replace the Class 411, 412, 421 and 423 units. They were constructed between 2002 and 2006, with a total of 127 of these units produced, in 4 coaches per unit, and the service that I'm driving today is formed of 3 units joined together for a total of a 12 coach train. So the length of each coach on this train is just over 20 metres, or just under 67 feet. These units have a maximum speed of 100 miles per hour, though the maximum speed we'll be able to get up to on this journey today is 90 miles per hour. The total weight of each 4-coach unit is around 170 tonnes, and they run on the 750 volts DC third rail electrification system found throughout southern England. Okay, so I've just jumped into the cab of the unit to set up here ready for departure, and it's a bit of a lengthier setup procedure than we have for most units that I drive on this channel. So the first thing I'm going to do is press Shift and W to insert the master key. Now that I've done that, I'm going to move the reversing handle into the forward position and reset the AWS self-test sequence. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is press I to turn on the instrument lights, just so that you can see the instruments a bit more clearly. And now I'm going to look at one of the 3 computers on the left here. So you've got 3 different displays. The top one is the train management system computer. The middle display is the destination display screen. And the bottom display there, that's the GSM-R radio system. So what I'm going to do first of all is set up the destination display. So use the F7 and F8 keys to scroll between the different destinations. I'm now going to scroll up to Portsmouth Harbour. There's quite a few options here for London Waterloo, of course, via different places. And I'm just going slightly further. There we are. The first selection that comes up as Portsmouth Harbour is the correct one. So now the destination boards on the outside of the train are showing the correct destination. Now to set up the GSM-R radio system, we need to take note of the signal number in front of the train. So you can just see there. I'll just zoom in case you can't see it very well. We're actually at signal Whiskey 19. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to set up the GSM-R system. So if I just zoom in a bit, click on the very top right hand side button, it now wants the registration code, which is the head code of this train, which is 1 Papa 55. So I press 1 and now press 7 for the letter P. It's a bit like the old mobile phone systems when we used to text back in the day. I certainly remember my old Nokia 3310. So now 1P55, and now the signal number, which as we saw was 19, so just type 019 and tick, and now just wait until it tells you that we're registered on the system. So just wait, check head code, and there we are. We're now registered on the GSMR system. Now the next thing I need to do is I need to go to the top computer, the train management computer, to start the brake check on this train. So you can see there's several different options at the bottom. First of all, I'm going to press Control and 1 just to acknowledge the configuration, as I find that if you don't do that, then the train actually tends to not move. So you do need to do that. That's very important when you've got the Armstrong Powerhouse pack installed. So now I'm going to press Control and 5 to go to the braking system, and Control and 7 to go to the main brake check. So you just look at the number below whatever it is that you want to click on, and then press Control and that number to make that selection. So now you can see it's telling us that we've got lots of things that we need to do here. So the first thing I need to do is place the power and brake controller into the off position. So I'm going to turn on the HUD for a moment just so I can see what I'm doing. And this is why I put the reversing handle into forward rather than neutral, is you can't actually move the power and brake controller to this position otherwise. And now I'm going to press Control. Oh, I just turned on a bit more of the HUD there. And now I'm going to press Control and 1, which is Start Brake Check. So it's just ticked that the main brake check is active, and it's ticked now that what I need to do is place the PBC power brake controller into the full service position, which on the HUD would be 85%. And now the next thing it wants me to do is put it into the emergency position, which is 100%. And now I need to place it into the off position. Okay, now that I've done that, I can turn off the HUD for a moment. I need to activate the emergency stop plunger in the cab, which is just down here, this big red button. So I'm going to click on that. And now I'm going to click on it again to release. And now that I've done that, the brake check is complete, and we are pretty much set up ready for departure. I'm just going to mention a couple more things first. So I was just trying to get to the top there, but for some reason it doesn't want... Oh, that's it. You have to press Shift and 0 to get back to the main screen. So other things that you need to do, you need to press Control and D to turn on the driver's safety device. You need to turn the headlights into the daytime position, which is by pressing the H key twice. I can see that the signal ahead is now clear, and just to mention, the Mike Foxtrot MF at the top of the signal means that we're cleared onto the main fast line out of London Waterloo Station. I'm also going to turn off the driver's reminder appliance now that that signal is clear. And now if I just continue around the cab here, just to mention the controls quickly. So first of all, we've got the combined traction and brake controller. There are 5 notches of power on this particular controller. And then when you push it away from the off position into the braking position, it's not notched at all, and it's a smooth control to allow more precise control of the braking on this unit. Now the 3 dials you can see at the top of the dashboard there, the one on the left is the brake gauge. So you can see there the right hand needle is the important one for us, which is the brake cylinder pressure gauge, and that indicates how hard the brakes are applied, particularly accurate at lower speeds, but due to the blended braking on this unit, it's actually less accurate at higher speeds. And for that you need to look at the gauge on the right hand side, which says braking and driving, you can see there, and that's showing you the effort involved in each. Now that's the gauge that I'm going to use to judge how hard I'm braking when braking from higher speeds, because this train, as I say, uses blended braking, so it's not just using the air braking system, but it's also using rheostatic braking. So as I release the brakes here, there we are. In fact, we just started moving before we were ready, so I've just applied them again very quickly. I just wanted to show you what happened with the different gauges there. So, of course, with that needle on the gauge on the right, if it's pointing to the left, then we're braking. If it's pointing to the right, then we're accelerating. And if it's pointing to the 0 position, I've got neither power nor braking currently active. And so that would be generally, if I'm coasting, then that should definitely be pointing towards 0. Of course, in the middle of the cab here, we have the speedometer measured in miles per hour. And as already mentioned, the maximum permitted speed for this train is 100 miles per hour, and the maximum permitted speed on this route will be 90 miles per hour. Unfortunately, you can't open the windows on the train, so the final thing I'm just going to mention is, of course, the horn, which is a 2-tone horn controllable with the space bar and the B key. Okay, so now we've set up the train ready for departure, let's just take another quick look outside and then depart out on our journey towards Portsmouth Harbour. Departing away from London Waterloo, the speed limit here is currently 15 miles per hour, with just over 24 miles to go to our first stop, which is Woking. So I've just cut the power off now at 15 miles per hour just to allow the train to coast until we're able to accelerate further. I realised something that I forgot to mention in the introduction to the video is that this is actually a two-part scenario that comes with the Class 450 enhancement pack. The reason why it's split into two parts is just because of how demanding this journey is, as it's simulated on a weekday rush hour evening in 2017, so there's an awful lot of AI services, and with a lot of AI then the game can get the out-of-memory crash dump, so Armstrong Powerhouse have split this into two scenarios, with the second part starting at Haslemere, and of course I'll edit it into one scenario, or should I say I'll edit it both into one in this video. So we're just past the 50 mile per hour speed post, and I'm just waiting to be able to accelerate up towards that. We can start accelerating up towards 50 as we get to the next junction that's just coming up. So now we're at the junction, I'm going to start accelerating up towards 50 miles per hour. This section of the route is certainly a section that I'm very, very familiar with, as between Waterloo and Clapham Junction is part of my journey to work. As I mentioned in my recent London to Brighton video, I no longer live in Bexhill, and I now live in Thornton Heath, which is on the southern network between East Croydon and Clapham Junction. So to get to work, I travel from Thornton Heath to Clapham Junction, and then change, should I say, onto South Western Railway for the journey up into Waterloo, as London Ambulance headquarters where I work is just about 5 minutes walk from Waterloo Station. As we get towards 50 miles per hour, I'm just going to shut the power off now, just allow the train to coast at 50 until we're able to accelerate further. We're now coming up on Vauxhall Station, which is the first station out of London Waterloo. In a moment, the speed limit's going to be increasing to 60 miles per hour, so I'm just looking out for the 60 mile per hour speed post now. And it's just coming up. We can accelerate up towards 60 at the next signal. So just approaching that signal now. I've just gone up to full power as we were doing around 47, so I know we'd be clear of the signal in time. So now I'm going to accelerate up to 60, and then once again I'm going to shut off the power and allow the train to coast. The next speed change will be a drop in the speed limit to 50 miles per hour as we get closer to Clapham Junction. The route that's now climbing on the flyover that you can see there, that's about to cross over us, is actually the route that the Eurostars used to take when they used to run out of London Waterloo, and they used to cross over there onto, I think it would be the South London line, and then from there they would travel down the Chatham main line onto the Southeastern main line, and then they'd continue all the way down through Ashford towards Dover. We're now passing Nine Elms Battersea Station on the right hand side, so that's actually on the Windsor lines here. We're actually running as 8 tracks from London Waterloo, so to our left right now we've got the 2 slow lines. We're on the down main first, to our right is the up main first, and then the 4 tracks to the far right are the Windsor lines, which split away from us at Clapham Junction. And joining us in a moment from the left will be the Brighton main line, which we passed under just a moment ago. So at this point we're now going to see quite a significant drop in the frame rate. Unfortunately this route will bring any system to its knees, and I'm expecting a frame rate of probably around 10 as we go through Clapham Junction, but it should ease up very quickly as we get just to the other side of the station. So I've just made a light brake application now just to bring our speed down. The 50 mph speed limit that I mentioned a moment ago comes into force just before the platforms here at Clapham Junction. I've now released the brakes and I'm just going to coast at 50 until we can accelerate further. The next speed change will be an increase in the speed limit to 75 mph just after we've passed through this station. So we managed 11 frames a second we dropped to, now we're on 12. I mean, we've been averaging 15 to 20 since leaving Waterloo. But once we get to the other side of Wimbledon, then we should be able to see frame rates. Well, I locked the recordings in Train Simulator at 30 frames a second. Though you can actually get frame rates as high as 80 to 100 very easily once you've passed Woking and you're on the Portsmouth direct line. So we just passed the 75 mph speed post. The Brighton main line's diverging away from us to the left. And you can accelerate towards 75 as you pass the signal gantry that we just did for signal facing in the opposite direction. We'll shortly be coming up on Earlsfield Station. Now that we're doing around 75 miles per hour, I need to go between notches 2 and 3 of power to try and maintain the speed. Coming up on the right hand side now, or should I say what we're passing on the right hand side now, is Wimbledon Train Care Depot. And in a moment the slow lines are going to split up, so the down slow is going to remain to the left of us, but the up slow is now going to climb above us and come down on the other side. So we're actually going to have the tracks separated, so we're going to have the down slow on our left, down first here that we're on now, up first and up slow. And I don't know why they did that here, but I actually quite like that because you get a better effect when overtaking trains, I find. Now coming up on Wimbledon Station, and Wimbledon should hopefully feature in a video that I'm hoping to make not too far into the future. I'm going to take a look at the backdated train sim West Croydon to Wimbledon line as it was in 1997, before it was closed to make way for the Croydon tramlink, and I just thought that that would make quite an interesting video, but I didn't want to just do it as a route learning video, so I want to try and write a bit of a script for it and do it as a bit of a hybrid between a route learning video and the old route guide videos that I used to do, and to hopefully give you something a bit more interesting to watch. So I'm just cutting the power back now to idle, just because I realise that we are following another train and we keep getting double yellow signals. If we pass a double yellow signal, then I will apply the brakes to slow the train down. We're now coming up on Rains Park Station. I'm just applying some braking now just to bring our speed down as we've just passed the double yellow signal, and we're now coming up on New Malden Station. As the signal that we just passed just then is also double yellow, I'm just going to allow the train to coast for now. So we're coasting at around, is that 55 miles per hour. The speed limit's just gone up to 80 miles per hour when we can accelerate more. And now finally, we've managed to reach the 30 frames a second that I've been hoping for a while. And it might drop once or twice, a couple of times on this journey now, but we're pretty much going to be at the locked 30 frames a second that I wanted all of the way to Portsmouth now. We're now coming up on Wimbledon Station. And I've just given us a small amount of power to start accelerating. I don't want to accelerate very much because we are still following those double yellow signals. Just increasing the power a bit now as I can see that the next signal ahead is green, and we're now coming up on Surbiton Station. The speed limit's now increasing further to 90 miles per hour, which is the maximum speed we'll be able to do on this journey today. And in a moment, the route towards Hampton Court is going to diverge away from us. So one of the lines is going to be going from the far tracks, and then one is going to climb over us to join that in heading towards Hampton Court. So that is a route that I covered in a previous video, possibly the laggiest video I ever recorded. I do hope to cover that route again at some point. Hopefully there'll be a bit less lag, because this computer does seem to be handling this route a bit better than my old computer did. And as we get towards 90 miles per hour, I need to go between notches 2 and 3 of power to maintain that speed. We're now coming up on Esher Station. We're now coming up on Hersham Station with around 8.5 miles to go to Woking. I've just shut off the power now as the signal ahead was displaying a double yellow aspect. At this point I'm just going to allow the train to coast. We're going to lose a bit of speed and then I will apply braking if we pass a double yellow signal. Coming up on Walton-on-Thames Station. We're now coming up on Weybridge Station with around 5 miles to go. So far we've coasted down to 80 miles per hour and we're continuing to lose speed as we're sort of chasing these yellows, but I'm trying to do this in a safe manner. Never just try and aim to chase the yellows. It's just a case of if the signal jumps to green before I've reached or passed it, then I'm just allowing the train to continue to coast. If it doesn't jump to green, I will immediately make a brake application. We're now coming up on Byfleet and New Horse Station with around 4 miles to go. That signal didn't change just there, so I'm now making a brake application to bring our speed down. We're now coming up on West Byfleet Station with around 3 miles to go, and this is the final station before Woking. As that signal cleared to green, I'm just giving us a little bit of speed now, just going to bring us up to around 60 and then coast once again. At the next signal, we've got around 2 miles to go. And the next signal has just jumped to green, so I'm going to give us a bit more power now, just to try to get to Woking that little bit quicker. What I will say is, though, that at the signal following the one just coming up, so the one just coming up, as mentioned, is 2 miles to Woking. The following signal after this one, if it's displaying a double yellow aspect, then the signal guarding Woking Station is at danger. So be prepared to stop before Woking platform. I can see that that signal ahead is displaying a double yellow, so the signal guarding Woking is at danger. I'm now going to shut off the power to allow the train to coast, and I'll start applying the brakes as we pass this signal. For now, I'm just going to make a light brake application to bring our speed down, but I'll adjust the braking as required as we get closer to Woking. I'm now increasing the braking, as I can see that is a single yellow signal, and Woking Station is quite close to this one. This signal section, should I say, is much shorter than the previous signal section, and I can see the red signal coming up just ahead. And if you look very carefully in the distance there, you can actually see the reason for the red signal, which is that there's a train on my track right in the platform where we need to stop in a moment. I've just been slowing down to bring us to a gentle stop in front of the signal. Hopefully the train in the platform will clear quite quickly. It looks like the train is moving now. In fact, it is. The signal's just jumped to a single yellow, though in reality I don't think it would jump quite as quickly. There's a bit of an overlap in the signal sections, and the signal wouldn't jump right up to single yellow the second that the train's past the signal in front of us. It would take a few more seconds than that. So I'm just going to accelerate a little bit up towards 20. We're doing about 18 now. Let's just shut off the power here. And here at Woking, I need to stop right at the end of the platform. And you can see the 12-car stop sign is just coming up on the right-hand side, right at the end by the signal there. To stop in the right place, the signal will in fact need to disappear completely from my view. And we should now be stopping in just about the right place. Hello driver, press tab and to obtain permission to pass the signal ahead at danger. So just press tab here and then the request is approved. So yeah, that's just due to a faulty signal on this scenario. As I was about to say, departing away from Woking, the speed limit is 90 miles per hour, though soon dropping to 40, with around 2.5 miles to go to our next stop, which is Worplesdon. So I press tab to request permission to pass the signal ahead. Now, I'm going to try and drive this realistically as if this had been a failed signal. So whilst I didn't stop just there, I'm going to now treat it as the next signal is showing a danger aspect until I can see otherwise. So I'm not really going to accelerate above 30 miles per hour at this point. So we're just about to cross the junction now and turn away from the South Western Main Line onto the Portsmouth Direct Line. The speed limit drops to 40 miles per hour just here for the junction. I'm just going to allow the train to continue to coast at 30 until I can see what aspect the next signal is displaying. And as long as I'll get my words right in a second. And as long as it's displaying a clear aspect, then I will accelerate. Don't know why I'm getting a bit tongue-tied tonight. I'm really not sure why. It seems to happen more on some videos than others, and I've never quite understood it. But these relearning videos are completely unscripted as such, whereas I write scripts for sort of the route guide and train guide videos to try and avoid that. With the route learning videos, it's just a series of bullet points. The speed limit's just gone up to 90 miles per hour. We're now on a downhill grade towards Worplesdon. So what I'm looking out for now is the next signal, which is just coming up, and then I'm going to apply the brakes for Worplesdon Station, just past the second overbridge past that signal. So if you can just see the green light in the distance there, I'm going to shut off the power just before we get to that signal. Okay, I've just shut off the power now. The train will still continue to accelerate on this downward grade. We've just passed the first overbridge past the signal. We're now at the second overbridge. I'm now going to apply the brakes, and I'm going to go up to about 30 to 40 on the brake gauge. Looks we're about 38 roughly for the braking effort there. The gradient's also changing here to an upward grade, which does help with the braking as we get closer to the station. And at Worplesdon, we need to stop at the end of the platform. I've just reduced the braking as I thought we might be slowing down a little bit too early there. The gradient has now levelled out as we enter the platform here. You You now see the 10 and 12 car stop sign literally perched on the end of the platform. So if I stop next to that, just slightly further up, yep, we should now be stopping in just about the right place. Departing away from Worplesdon, the speed limit here is still 90 miles per hour, with around 3.5 miles to go to the next stop, which is Guildford. In a moment we're going to start on an upward gradient of 1 in 111, which will affect our acceleration, and you can actually see that grade change coming up just ahead in the distance. So this upward gradient is significantly affecting our acceleration, and we're struggling to even get to 60 at this point. I think we will get to just above it in a moment. I do need to keep an eye out on the signals along here as well, as I've noticed we've got a double yellow signal ahead. I'm not going to start braking as we pass this signal, simply because we are on this uphill gradient, and I'm not going to shut off the power either, but as soon as we crest the hill in a moment, and you can see that gradient change, then I'll shut off the power at that point. So we're just reaching the crest of the hill now. I'm just going to shut off the power and now start making a light brake application to bring our speed down. For the signal that we just passed, if that signal is at a double yellow aspect, then the signal guarding Guildford Station is currently showing a danger aspect. So for this signal coming up now, if it shows double yellow, I'm cleared into Guildford. If it shows single yellow, then the signal guarding Guildford is still at red. So we just passed that signal on a single yellow aspect, and I'm going to continue to slow down now, assuming that the next signal is red until I can see otherwise. At this point we're also passing a warning for an upcoming 50 mph speed limit, which comes into force just before Guildford Station. I can see a green signal ahead, but I realise that's not for our track, but the signal on our track is now showing a single yellow, which means we are now cleared into the platforms at Guildford. At this signal we've got around half a mile to go to the stop. Just going to give us a little bit of power and accelerate a little, but not too much, so I'm going to shut off the power at just above 40 miles per hour here. You can now see the platforms coming up at Guildford Station, so I'm just going to start braking now to bring our speed down. And of course, once again, we need to stop at the end of the platform. And you can see here the 50 mph speed post for that limit coming into force. If you were on the far left track here, then the speed limit would be 20, but I would just like to point out that the speed limit actually drops to 25 mph right at the end of this platform. So for example, if you were driving an empty coaching stock move and you were coming through here without stopping, somebody wanted to walk in front of the train just then and float in the air. Yeah, but as I was saying, if you wanted to come through here without stopping, then you would need to make sure that you slowed down to 25 before the end of the platform. So when you're driving this scenario, do take note, you're actually going to be following another train all of the way to Haslemere, and then the signal should ease up from there, but expect a lot more yellow signals on this journey yet. And we should now be stopping in just about the right place. Departing away from Guildford, the speed limit was 25 mph with just over 4 miles to go to the next stop at Godalming. And just as we enter this tunnel here, the speed limit is now going up to 60 mph, though it's actually quite difficult to work out when the rear of the train has cleared the 60 mph speed post. It's something about halfway through this tunnel. So I think we're probably about halfway through, getting slightly closer to the other end now, so I'm going to start giving us some power. Just after we exit this tunnel, we're going to pass a 70 mph speed post and then go through a second short tunnel. The speed limit's now increasing to 70 mph, and we're not going to reach 60 before the rear of the train's past that speed post, so we don't need to worry too much. And we're just coming up on a junction now where the line towards Redhill and Gatwick Airport diverges to the left. The speed limit's now increasing to 85 mph. As the speed limit went up to 85, we had 1.7 miles to go to an upcoming 70 limit. I am still going to be keeping an eye on the signals along here as well, just to make sure that we don't end up running into any cautionary signals. But that's very likely to happen before we get to the next stop. So we now have a double yellow signal. I'm going to cut the power off at this point and allow the train to coast. If you want to brake for this 70 mile per hour speed limit, then you need to start braking at this point, just before this overbridge here. So on this right hand curve, you've got the buildings on the left and an immediate overbridge. And that's where you need to start slowing for the 70. So I was braking for the signal anyway, but the 70 mile per hour speed limit is just going to be coming up in a moment. Speed limit is now 70 miles per hour, and we're just coming up on Farncombe Station. And if the signal after Farncombe platform is is off, which means it's displaying any aspect other than red, then we are cleared into our stop at Godalming. So I'm just going to allow the train to coast at this point, and I'm going to start braking for our stop at the end of this right hand curve here. So we've got a warning for an upcoming 60 limit, which isn't going to affect us because we're going to be slowing down anyway. And I'm going to start braking for Godalming as we reach the end of this right hand curve. I'm just increasing the braking a bit, as I'm not sure we're slowing down quite quickly enough as I saw the platform coming up there. Of course, here at Godalming, we do need to stop at the end of the platform, and the speed limit dropped to 60 miles per hour just before our stop here. So we have come into the platform a little bit on the quick side. I think we entered there at about 35, but the good thing is that because it's a full-length train, we can bring that speed down quickly enough to stop in the right place at the end. And we should now be stopping in just about the right place. Departing away from Godalming, the speed limit here is 60 miles per hour, though soon going up to 75 miles per hour. And at this point we've got around 8.5 miles to go to the next stop, which is Haslemere, at which point I'll then jump to part 2 of the scenario to continue the journey. The speed limit's just jumped to 75 miles per hour, and we're on a 1 in 150 upward gradient after departing away from Godalming, which does affect our acceleration. The speed limit is now increasing to 80 miles per hour. We're now coming up on Milford Station, and immediately after we've passed through Milford Station, the speed limit then goes up to 85 miles per hour. We do have a single yellow signal here, so I now need to start braking for, well, the next signal, again assuming that it's red, until I can see otherwise. It's actually 1.2 miles between Milford Station and the next signal, so now just reduce the braking and we're just going to gently slow down until I can see what aspect that signal's displaying. And you can now see the next signal is red, so I've slowed down quite nicely for that. And I'll just continue to slow down gently. Hopefully it will jump up to a yellow before we reach it. Okay, so that signal has now cleared to a single yellow. I'm now going to accelerate until we see the next station, which is Whitley Station. Whitley Station is around half a mile from the next signal, so we can accelerate until we get towards Whitley, and then we need to start braking to slow down for the next signal. We're currently on a 1 in 82 upward gradient, so that's a very steep upgrade, and it's significantly affecting our acceleration, but it also helps with the braking as we were slowing down for the last signal. We're now coming up on Whitley Station and the gradient is changing to a down 1 in 110 grade. At this point I'm shutting off the power and applying some light braking to ensure that we don't gain any further speed and we start to slow down for the next signal. As with this next signal, it's actually on the left-hand curve coming up in a moment, but this is a blind signal in terms of you really can't see it until you're up very close, so you've got to drive with extreme caution when approaching this signal if it's at danger. In fact, it wasn't a danger. Thankfully it was cleared, so we can now start accelerating once again. At this signal, we've got around 4 miles to go to Haslemere. The gradient's now changing once again and we're going back to an upgrade of 1 in 80 and we're now going to be on that grade until just the other side of Haslemere Station, so it will help us to slow down as we get a bit closer. at this signal just here, we've got around 3 miles to go. So at this whistle post here, where you can see the next signal just ahead, at this point we've got around 1.6 miles to go, and what I'm going to do now, I'm going to shut off the power and allow the train to coast at the next right hand curve. The 1 in 80 upward gradient will cause us to start losing some speed, and then I'll apply the brakes at the next overbridge. So we're just coming up on that next right-hand curve now. I'm just going to shut off the power at this point. And as soon as we reach the next overbridge, I'll brake between 30 and 40 on the brake gauge. You can now see the platform coming up at Haslemere Station, so it's slowing down quite nicely. We don't want to enter the platform any faster than about 30 miles per hour at most. Do bear in mind that we are still on this 1 in 80 upward gradient, and we will be starting on an upward gradient as we depart away from here, so you've got to be careful that the train doesn't roll back, though it does seem with this train, unlike most of the trains that I drive, that the brakes don't fully release until we've applied some power, which actually I think is a really good idea to help prevent rollbacks. And just stopping next to the 10 to 12 car stop sign at the end here, we should now be stopped in just about the right place. Departing away from Haslemere, the starting speed limit here is 85 miles per hour, and as mentioned just before we stopped, we did start there on a 1 in 80 upward gradient, and at this point we've got around 12 miles to go to the next stop, which is Petersfield. So the gradient's now changing to a downhill gradient of 1 in 100, and we're going to be on that downhill gradient for a little while now. So we're going to accelerate for a bit, and then I'm going to shut off the power and allow the train to coast. They're accelerating quite nicely here due to the downhill gradient, and the speed limit does go up to 90 miles per hour along here, but I'm not sure if I've missed the speed post or not. I do know that it will be at 90 before we were able to reach 85, so it may well be that I've missed it, but I'm just looking out along here just to see if I have or not. Now we're reaching 80 miles per hour. I'm going to shut off the power and allow the train to coast at this point. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I did miss that 90 mile per hour speed post, and the speed limit is now 90, so you can accelerate up towards that. As I say, I've just shut off the power around 80 due to the downward gradient at the moment. This curve, just as we pass the signal, there's a visible grade change here as we're now changing to up 1 in 250, so I do now need to apply some power, and we need to go between notches 2 and 3 to maintain 90. Now coming up on Liphook Station with around 8 miles to go. The gradient's now changing to a down 1 in 80 gradient, so I've just shut off the power here, and I'm going to use the brakes to control the speed. So it's the left curve immediately before a signal. That's where you need to just be aware that the grades change to a steep downward gradient. I'll continue to use the brakes to control the speed until we've passed through the next station, which is coming up in a moment. We're just about to come up on Liss Station, with around 3.5 miles to go. I announced Liss Station just slightly too early there. I'm still controlling the speeds with the brakes at present. And I'm just looking out for those platforms ahead, as that's where the gradient will level out. Yep, I can now see the platform coming up, so we're now coming up on Liss with 3.5 miles to go. At the next signal, we've got 3/4 of a mile to go to an upcoming 85 mph speed limit. At this point, I'm just going to allow the train to coast, and let us coast down towards 85, very gradually. So we're now coming up on the 85 mph speed limit. I just need to go into notch 2 to try and maintain this speed here. At this point we've got 1.6 miles to go. I'm going to shut the power off and allow the train to coast at the next signal, which marks 1.3 miles to go. So I've just shut the power off now, and I'm going to allow the train to coast, and I'm going to brake for our stop between this upcoming overbridge and the crossing just after. So our speed's coming off quite nicely here. Here at Petersfield Station, once again, we need to stop at the end of the platform. Just reduce the braking as we're slowing down just a little bit too soon there, so I've just left us in a minimal brake application to enter the platform at around 30 miles per hour. So I'm just braking to stop at the 12-car stop sign right at the end of the platform here, and we should now be stopping in just about the right place. Departing away from Petersfield, the speed limit here is 85 miles per hour, with around 11.5 miles to go to the next stop, which is Havant. The next landmark along here will be the next signal, which marks 10.4 miles to go to Havant, 0.8 miles to go to an upcoming 70 limit, and 1.5 miles to go to an upcoming 40 limit. So we're just coming up on that next signal now. What I'm going to do along here is I'm going to accelerate up to 70, and I'm going to shut off the power at that point and allow the train to coast. So we've now got a warning for the upcoming 70 limit that I mentioned a moment ago, and we're just reaching 70 now, so I'm just going to shut off the power now and coast the train, and then I'm going to apply the brakes. We're going to get a warning for an upcoming 40 limit. We're then going to pass the 75 speed post, and I'm going to apply the brakes for the upcoming 40 shortly after that. So we're just passing the 40 warning now, which is around 3/4 of a mile to the 40 limit itself. And now we've got the 70 limit just coming up. And now I'm just going to start applying the brakes to slow us down in time for that 40 limit. I braked a little bit harder there than I planned. Let's just reduce that down a bit. So the 40 limit comes into force immediately before the tunnel that you can see coming up just ahead. And now we're doing 40. I'm just going to allow the train to coast through the tunnel here. Just after we've passed through the tunnel, the speed limit is going up to 70 miles per hour, and we've got around 8.6 miles to go at the tunnel exit. Speed limit's now immediately going up to 70 miles per hour, and I'm going to accelerate in a moment shortly after the next signal comes into view. I can just see that signal now. I'll just give it a few more seconds, and now I'm going to start accelerating up towards 70. At this point we're now on a downgrade of 1 in 80, so I'm going to shut off the power before we reach 70 and allow the train to coast. To issue a correction there. I think the downgrade's just starting now. It wasn't actually immediately after we left the tunnel, which is why the train wasn't accelerating especially quickly, but we're definitely now on that down 1 in 80 grade. Now we're doing around 65. I've just shut off the power, and I'll use the brakes to control the speed as we get to 70 to hold us at between sort of 67 and 70 miles an hour. We just passed another speed post for a 40 over 70 speed limit, so of course that doesn't affect us as the 40 applies to freight trains. So the gradient has just briefly shallowed, but it's going to be going down once again in a moment. So I still can't apply power at this stage. We're now passing a 60 over 75 speed post, so the speed limit is now going up to 75 miles per hour. Just giving us a bit of power to accelerate up towards 75 now. The next speed change will be an increase in the speed limit to 90 miles per hour at 60 over 90 post, but that's only 0.8 miles from a 70 limit, so you're actually not able to accelerate up to 90 before you have to start slowing down for that 70. I've just shut off the power around 75, and now once again I need to use the brakes to control the speed. So now passing that 90 speed post, as mentioned we can't really accelerate, so I'm just going to stay at 75 for now. We've now got that warning for the upcoming 70 mile per hour speed restriction, and I'm going to brake lightly for that restriction at the next signal. So I'm just slowing down to 70 now, and in a moment we're going to be passing through Rowland's Castle Station with around 3.2 miles to go to Havant. The speed limit's now increasing to 85 miles per hour, and we're on a down 1 in 120 gradient, which will help us to speed up a bit. Now the next signal just coming up, we've got 2.5 miles to go. Now we're doing around 85, the grade has shallowed, and I'm just shutting off the power to allow the train to coast. At the next signal we've got 0.7 miles to go to an upcoming 50 limit. Just shortly after this signal we should have a warning for that 50 limit, and then shortly after the 50 limit there's a 40 limit. There's about 0.4 miles between the two limits, so I'm now just applying the brakes to slow down for 50, and then once we're down to 50 I'll just continue lightly braking to slow us down to 40, with the 40 limit coming into force just immediately before the junction, which is where we joined the West Coastway route from Brighton, Littlehampton and Bognor Regis. I think I can see the 50 limit there, and we're slowing down quite quickly enough, so I've just applied the brakes quite a bit harder than I usually would, and we're now down to 50 in time, literally just. I don't recommend driving like that, so what I should have done is just made a bit of a harder brake application there. The braking point was correct, I think, it's just that the braking application wasn't quite hard enough. We're now approaching that 40 speed post just as we reach the junction here, so if you went left you'd be going towards Brighton and straight on towards Portsmouth and Southampton. And once again here at Havant Station I need to stop at the end of the platform. You can now see the 10 and 12 car stop sign coming up just at the end here. So I'm just going to brake now to try and stop as close to next to that as we can. And we should now be stopping in just about the right place. Departing away from Havant, the starting speed limit is 40 miles per hour, though it's quickly going up to 70 miles per hour. And at this point we've got around 6.3 miles to go to the next stop, which is Fratton. So we're just coming up on the 70 mile per hour speed post now, and we can accelerate up towards 70 as we reach a footbridge coming up in a moment. So we're just coming up on that footbridge now. And now I'm going to increase the power to accelerate up towards 70. In a moment we're going to be passing through Bedhampton Station. The speed limit's now increasing further to 85 miles per hour at that 55 over 85 speed post there, and we can accelerate up towards that, though there will be a speed change between here and Fratton where we have to slow down to 60 before we can go back up to 85 again. There's a warning there for a 40 mile per hour speed restriction if you were diverging to the right at the next junction. So that speed restriction doesn't apply to us, but it's at the next junction that I want to start braking for the upcoming 60 speed restriction. We're just coming up on the junction now that I mentioned, and we're doing almost 85 miles per hour. I've just shut off the power at this point, and now we've got the warning for that upcoming 60 limit, so I'm just going to put the brakes on now to slow down in time for that. The limit drops to 60 immediately before the next junction, and then it increases to 85 just before Wiltley Station. So now we're down to 60. I'm just going to allow the train to coast until we're able to accelerate further. The 60 speed limit comes into force just now at this junction here. I said just before the junction, it's actually immediately after the junction for this bridge that we cross here. and then the speed limit immediately goes back up to, I said it's 85 as well, that's incorrect, 80 miles per hour is now the speed limit. And now it increases to 85 immediately before Hilsea Station, which is the station we're just about to pass through. So now I'm just going to accelerate up towards 80 miles per hour, and then I'm going to shut off the power to allow the train to coast. At the next signal coming up, we've got 1 mile to an upcoming 75 limit, and 1.3 miles to an upcoming 40 limit. So just got to 80, I'm now shutting off the power to allow the train to coast. We're now going to pass a warning for the upcoming 40 speed limit, and I want to be braking before this next signal that you can see coming up just ahead. So I've just applied the brakes now, currently about 35%, I probably want that a bit closer to 40 to ensure that our speed comes off in time. So we've just passed the 75 speed limit now, we've got around a third of a mile to the upcoming 40, so I'm just going to continue to brake at roughly this percentage because this seems to be bringing the speed off quite nicely. I actually think I might... There was another speed post there I noticed. I'll have a look at that afterwards when I'm editing the video. I think the 75 was actually just slightly further along as we passed another 75 speed post. Now I could be wrong, but certainly if you brake in that point you'll be slowing down correctly. We're now passing Fratton Depot on the left hand side, and Fratton Station will be coming up in a moment. The platform's going to be on the right hand side, and we need to stop at the S sign, which is next to the signal before the end of the platform. So the whole train won't fit into this station. In real life they use selective door opening so that the doors only open on the carriages that are actually stopped in the platform. And you can now see that signal coming up with the S sign on the right hand side. I actually find it more difficult to judge the correct stopping point when it's on the opposite side of the train to where you're sat. But if I stop immediately before that signal, then I'm hoping that we should be stopping in just about the right place. Departing away from Fratton, the speed limit here is still 40 miles per hour, with around 0.8 miles to go to the next stop, which is Portsmouth and Southsea. And along here, the speed limit will soon be dropping to 25 miles per hour, so I'm going to accelerate to about 30 to 35, and I'm just going to shut off the power to allow the train to coast. Okay, so now doing around 34 miles an hour. I've just shut off the power at this point, and I need to brake to slow for 25 miles per hour by the end of this next left-hand curve just coming up. The 25 limit comes into force immediately at the end of this curve. So we're now down to 25, and the next speed change will be a further drop in the speed limit, down to 15 miles per hour. And so that we're going to cross a point in a moment, and as we cross that point the speed limit's going to drop to 15. I think it's just after this point. I'm going to slow to 15 just before to ensure that I have slowed down in time. And there you can see the 15 mile per hour speed post just coming up now. Immediately before the platform here, we're on a 1 in 61 upward gradient, so we are going to lose a bit of speed. And I might need to give us a bit of power just to ensure that we can make it into the station okay, though so far we seem to be managing alright. The gradient has now levelled off as we entered the platform here. And here at Portsmouth and Southsea, once again, I need to stop at the end of the platform. And now you can see the 8, 10 and 12 car stop sign coming up there on the left hand side. This makes it a bit easier to stop than Fratton because it's on the driver's side rather than the opposite side of the cab. And we should now be stopping in just about the right place. Departing away from Portsmouth and Southsea, the speed limit here is 15 miles per hour. It's soon going up to 40, then quickly down to 20, so a few quick speed changes here. We certainly won't be able to get up to 40 miles per hour though. And we've got around 3/4 of a mile to go to our next and final stop, which is Portsmouth Harbour. I'm just shutting off the power now at 15 miles per hour, and I'm just going to allow the train to coast at this point. We can accelerate as we approach or as we pass the next signal. As I said, the speed limit has gone up to 40, but it's very quickly going down to 20. So what I would say at this point is don't accelerate above 20 miles per hour. So I've just shut off the power. I think actually we've reached 21 miles per hour there, but you can see the 20 mile per hour speed post just coming up on the left hand side. As we pass that speed post, we've then got 0.2 miles to go, or a fifth of a mile to go to an upcoming 15 limit, and that will be the last speed change before we enter Portsmouth Harbour. Now, in a moment we're going to be on a downgrade, so what I'm going to do, in fact, I'm just going to apply some braking to bring our speed down a little bit more to ensure that we don't end up breaking the speed limit here. The downgrade towards Portsmouth Harbour Station is 1 in 91. I was also just braking there to ensure that I've slowed down to 15 in time. You can now see the 15 mile per hour speed post just coming up. So I'm going to slow down to around 12 miles per hour now, and then I'm going to release the brakes and allow the train to continue to coast. And now I'm going to continue braking down, so I don't really want to be entering the platform at much faster than 15 miles per hour, and really you want to be down to 10 as you're going along the platform towards the buffer stops. And now we're just gradually coasting towards the buffers. I'm going to stop here just as the buffers disappear from the driver's cab window, and that should be about the right place. I really do need to do something about the people trying to walk in front of the trains on this route. I actually hit a person when I was practicing last night, just because they decided to walk right in front of me. And we should now be stopping in just about the right place. And so here we are, around 74 miles after leaving London, about 90 minutes. I hope it's going to be about 90 minutes in the final edited video. We've arrived at Portsmouth Harbour. So I just wanted to say thank you very much for watching this video, and I really hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, then please don't forget to like and subscribe. For the latest channel updates, you can find me on Facebook with the link to my Facebook page in the video description. And if you'd like to support me on Patreon to help me get more DLC and produce a wider range of videos, then please visit my Patreon page for more information. And again, the link for that is in the video description. Once again, thank you for watching.